here.
We all agreed tonight, all of the speakers have agreed that America has a very serious problem. Not only does America have a very serious problem, but our people have a very serious problem. America's problem is self-destruction. Yeah, it was self-destruction. Self-destruction. Yeah, it was self-destruction. Self-destruction. Yeah, it was self-destruction. Self-destruction. Yeah, it was self-destruction.
And that's exactly where we're headed. When that seems that America's been right on track with that. When that single was released 29 years ago, we're going to be exploring Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination today with Aslan Moonbeam right here on the screen for P.e.a.c.e with Aslan.
Yes, I am here. How are you today?
Very good.
All right, thanks for everybody for turning in. Do we have Jessica in the house?
I'm here. Hi, how's it going?
Very good, very good. And again, I am calling in from a extended road trip. I think I'll be coming back to California soon. So hopefully I'll be in the studio again for our next show. And got an interesting show today. We're going to be talking about, it's obviously Martin Luther King Day for anybody who was not aware of that. And we're going to talk about his assassination as well as the civil trial that went around this. And what most people don't know, while most people can tell you in America who the Kardashians are currently dating, they cannot tell you about some of the most important events in American history, one of them being the assassination of Martin Luther King. And what most people don't know is that in 1999, there was a civil trial, and the United States government was implicated and basically found guilty in taking part in his assassination. And does anybody remember in 1999 what the big news of the year was?
I don't.
Y2K.
Ah, yes, that's right.
Y2K, that's all anybody could talk about was Y2K, yep. Y2K.
That's right.
And this is a big part of today's show is going to be talking about media, alternative media, and what they actually do versus what we perceive they do. Because growing up in America, and other countries as well, I'm sure, but particularly here, we grow up sort of young and dumb, and we look to authority figures, particularly the media, for our information, our news, and we grow up with this understanding that there's this thing called freedom of the press, and that the information that comes over the airwaves is actually true, correct, and in our best interest. You know, the big question we would also is, well, why would they lie about that? Why exactly would the media lie to us? And so that's what we'll be talking about today, as well as the recent water wars that have started. And something happened this week, and it's happened before, and that was Governor Brown, the governor of California, declared the statewide emergency water crisis. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit and what that actually means and how it ties in with some of the other discussions we've had recently about water. And that's got a couple of videos as well we're going to be playing off YouTube, particularly a couple of them from the Martin Luther King trial itself. Now, many people often, when referring to this, will say that the government was found guilty of this. And if you, we're going to post links on the show, and what we're actually going to be playing is specifically excerpts from the trial itself. And the trial was not when James Earl Ray was arrested, and basically, from my take on it, there's this thing in our American justice system. It's actually not a justice system; it's a legal system called plea bargaining, and it's used to basically subvert your constitutional rights to a fair trial and coerce people into making admissions of guilt, whether they're guilty or not, just in fear of having a worse sentence. And what happens, from my perception of what's happened to James Earl Ray, is he was arrested for the assassination and then basically told, hey, if you confess, you won't get the death penalty. So you can only get the death penalty if you go to trial. And then if you confess, then what we'll do is we'll get more evidence, and then we'll try to prove you're innocent. But just to save yourself the possibility of being executed, we're going to go ahead and plead guilty. And so that's what happened. Is there was a guilty plea put in, which basically meant no trial. So there was no. It's funny how these assassinations always end up with no trial, right?
Yeah, right.
Why is that? Because they really don't want the facts to come out. And also something interesting is assassins always have three names. They always use the middle name, which I find very, very odd. And so even Martin Luther King's family did not believe James Earl Ray did it. And they pushed for. He ended up. I think he got knifed, and then through a blood transfusion, caught hepatitis C and died 1 year before the trial. Coincidental? Maybe, maybe not. But in 1999, the family did succeed in getting the trial. And guess what they were after? Anybody?
What were they? What were they after?
They were after the truth. Imagine that.
Imagine that, yeah.
They were suing for $100 and the truth.
Wow.
I think 100 was the minimum they had to go for. And lo and behold, nobody cares. I mean, now we're talking about one of the greatest civil rights leaders period in world history, not just American history, but in world history. And we would like to think that this man was revered by everybody, but particularly the black population. You know, he was trying to lead his people out of slavery, and unfortunately it didn't work. There's more slavery now than there was then. And personally, I think the state of civil rights is in decline. It's not getting better at all. And anybody that, looks at the headlines and without looking at if you can throw away the glitter and the gloss and actually look at what's happening, it's open season on black people. You cannot even you can't go a week without seeing a black person murdered.
Right.
Generally by police. And people just walk.
That's right.
But it's not just by police, it's by other people as well. But think about the state of consciousness, if you want to call it that, just about among people in general, and what happened what was the other big trial that went on concerning an African American in America?
Are you talking about O.J. Simpson?
O.J. Simpson, exactly. Everybody was up in arms about this, and the media gave it an immense amount of play. But when Martin Luther King's trial finally happened, how much play did it get?
Yeah.
Did you even hear about it?
I didn't hear about it. This is new to me, and I'm very interested.
and that's no accident that you didn't hear about it. And I certainly did. I wasn't on top of it back then. I didn't hear about it until years after. I was aware of it, but didn't really go in and listen to it. And the reason is because it didn't become news until it was until it was done. But if the media had paid any attention to it, during the trial itself, which just basically got a media blackout, then I think we'd be living in a much different world. We would have probably had a civil war a long time ago. And so we've got some clips. So, Sergio, do you want to cue up the clip? We're going to play a few minutes of the opening statements, closing statements, and then something from the center. But I would encourage everybody to educate yourself on this. Very, very important in the history of civilization, our civilization. And the entire, not the entire trial, they couldn't put the entire trial on because of witness protection and stuff like that. But the transcripts can be found online. We will have links to them at ScreamForPeace.net. But the opening and closing statements are there. And so you can see that the trial itself was not against the government. It wasn't the family was not suing the government, and it was actually, I think it's Jim Jowers. His name was Jowers. He was the owner of a restaurant and was witness to meetings and other things that basically implicated the government in a conspiracy due to holding information, not releasing information to the public, and basically sidestepping the entire justice system by just pinning it all on James Earl Ray, the Patsy. We're going to be talking about that a little bit, the ongoing Patsy program, and basically doing it all hush-hush, keeping it on everything on the down low, and keeping this big mysterious thing. And it's kind of weird. The most important people in history get assassinated by lone gunmen. Is that even possible? And think about how the security that surrounds these people and the collusion that it would take for them to get close, get away. And there's always this big controversy that surrounds the particulars. And this is the power of the press. And this is the power of what many people today call mind control. And every single person in America is a victim of mind control because our perspective of reality is formed by two things: a personal experience and the media that we absorb. And it's the media that we absorb, and comparatively speaking, we see more through media than we do our own personal experience. We know more about the world through the books we read, the television, the radio we listen to, than our own personal experience. You know, we've got a really good idea. You know, I've got crystal clear picture in my mind what the Oval Office looks like, what Washington, D.C. looks like, the layout of the streets, the monuments that are there. But I've never been there myself. You know, I know exactly what Mount Rushmore looks like, but I've never been there. And that can be said for, I think, much of what we perceive to be reality. So when that reality is skewed from the outset, then we have to question ourselves, what is reality? And I think that's basically one of the fundamental premises of the show, is exploring the nature of reality, not just through media, but fundamentally, what is reality? And if somebody wants to get into a little more depth, you can go to the topology section at ScreamForPeace.net, and we've got an update out there. But that's for another show. So, Sergio, can you cue up that first video from the opening?
Yeah, it's all queued.
Okay, let's go ahead and play that, and we'll play a song, and we will be back.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me, right at the outset, thank you for your attention throughout these proceedings. Long and sometimes tedious, though they may have been. We're very grateful for your You're sitting here and listening to the variety of evidence that you've heard. God will charge you on the various aspects of evidence that you've heard. You know you've heard a great deal of testimony here. You also have available to you a great number of exhibits that are attached to the testimony that you've heard. And we urge you to, at any point, require these exhibits to be brought to you so that you can read them and consider them at length. All the testimony, the various levels of credibility that you ascribe, His Honor will charge you in that, but it's really down to you at the end of the day, of how much you believe, the various people who sat in that chair there who told you things. Media is very quick and prompt to say and yell out that such and such is hearsay, second-hand account, third-hand account. What media is unable to tell you, of course, is what the law is with respect to hearsay evidence. They think because something is hearsay, a person is saying what another person has said, that it's not to be regarded, it's to be dismissed. In actual fact, ladies and gentlemen, if a witness is giving you hearsay, but the hearsay statement is from a person who is speaking against his own interest, saying something that could put him in jail, in the case of the defendant here, could have him indicted, then that is to be taken very seriously. It's admissible because of that exception. And there are a range of other exceptions why you can consider hearsay. Now, it's my job, my role here this morning to summarize the plaintiff's case. And it's a case that is divided really into 9 sections. In the course of presenting that case to you, we have taken witnesses out of order simply because they've come from various parts of the country and the world. We had problems with schedules. So at one time you would hear a witness talking to you about a rifle, a murder in evidence. Another time you'd hear about a witness talking about a crime scene, and we'd already gone over that. So it's difficult for you sometimes perhaps to put all those pieces together in an orderly fashion. That's really what I have to do. I have to try to do that. And I have to set it out so that you see how this case goes together. And I'm going to try to work with you on that this morning and try to help you understand it as best I can. The plaintiff's case began as a section that dealt with the background of all of us, why we're here. It's why Martin King was assassinated. I came to Memphis before he was assassinated. We dealt with the background. Then we moved into a second area of concern, which was local conspiracy. That meant what was happening here in Memphis, what events were going on that constituted conspiracy, legally, civil conspiracy under the law. Because that's really what we're asking you to find, as it relates to conspiracy. Thirdly, we dealt with a crime scene. What was this crime scene all about? Where was the crime scene? What happened there? Fourthly, we went into the rifle. This is the murder weapon. Discuss the murder weapon and ask you to consider all the evidence with respect to the murder weapon. Move next to a shadowy figure called Raoul. Who was this man who was claimed to have been James Earl Ray's controller in the role that he played in this case. Then we move beyond that to what we've called a broader conspiracy, beyond Memphis, that reached into the higher levels of the government of the United States and some of its agents and officials. We moved through that with you. We went beyond that then into really what amounts to a cover-up. What was the cover-up activity and why is that important and why have these events been shielded from public view so that only you 12, 14 here, day after day in his army, alone perhaps in this broad land and heard this evidence. How could that be? A case as important as this. How could that be? But it has been. Then we consider the defendant.
Non-fiction be the real hip-hop. We make you wanna kill cops, cats hate me. Cause they know my finger, they girls squad, they feel helpless, real jealous. We killed Elvis. I shot Reagan with the help of the Secret Service. Super double agent, shoot your mother with my brother's favor. 12 gauge waving, aiming at your brain. Strange universe, too famous. Leaving the murder scene blameless. Drug entertainment. From set the blaze of laser guns, saying what I wrote. They feel what I feel, they see the same picture. We make the biscuit do the talking and became richer. Nobody gets a record deal, you gotta take that shit. Treat the record label like a slut, then break that bitch. I keep it simple for these stupid cats, claiming you knew the facts, but in reality, we were trapped. Jesus Christ was a gangster rapper. They killed him, then he came back and made a platinum album. The path of travel like the dragon shadow, invisible to CIA camera angles. They got a file on every rap group. They killed the last man who had proof. They after me for information that I have too. I'm paranoid, tell me what the fuck they asked you. You fuck around with me and I'ma have to blast you. The CIA trying to kill me, big bad news. Get the fuck up out my way when I pass through. I'm paranoid, tell me what the fuck they asked you. You fuck around with me and I'ma have to blast you. The CIA trying to kill me, big bad news. Fuck around with non-fiction, that's a bad move. Symbolism, socialism, live life, lead, learn. Struggle, war, hope, drug fiends, the White House burn. Sex, pain, fear, freedom, love. Young guns be shooting. Genocide, revolution, lost souls prostituting. Military confrontation, safe sex, emancipation. Peace to all the homeless people living in the train station. Project Wars, build a 1 verse 4. Lock the door, burn the disc, now everybody hit the motherfucking floor. They bustin', I'm a glutton for the shit. I'm number 6 on their list, next to kissing all these kids. Cause I run with Asians, Latinos, and black fists. 5% is Caucasians, those who live communists. They broke in my house, planted bugs and on my legs on my couch. They after me, what? Let me find out. I'm not having it. My rap attract the service like a magnet. The backs get nothing like crowded parties with no laminates. If I'ma die busting and struggling. I'm hustling for the people, fuck them devils and corruptions. Nothing for nothing. Ain't this something how they do? They ID me due to my tattoo. I'm paranoid, tell me what the fuck they asked you. You fuck around with me and I'ma have to blast you. The CIA trying to kill me, big bad news. Get the fuck up out my way when I pass through. I'm paranoid, tell me what the fuck they asked you. You fuck around with me and I'ma have to blast you. The CIA trying to kill me, big bad news. Fuck around with non-fiction, that's a bad move. Projects for straight jackets, electroshock states, I rock a fallout, traded for royalty rates. Get your drink on, we build a bomb, spit in your face. Smart to change cars, I cruise the block, I do it for chase. Nice fight works, a fancy knife work. Hit the Christ, non-fiction, striking prison night shirts. I pay dues, nothing to lose. Steady busting off weapons and tools. When I come home, I be smelling shit and furniture's moved. Keep the slug, takes the weight off, I live this for real. I do this for the dead, rest in peace, I'm holding you near. Making up time, 12 years, we on tour, we blow you back off. Support cats, jack your car seats to take a scalp off. Soldiers of memories, inherited from way back. Cyanide their bullets, spots to follow my stats. We too futuristic, thugs to robots, experiments. 4-point restraints in my hypercube, my medicines. Pain veterans, crippling souls. It's getting bigger now, the information running the globe. It's just my mechanics, either with the gather's addicts. Widespread panic until the Sabbath. I'm paranoid, tell me what the fuck they asked you. You fuck around with me and I'ma have to blast you. The CIA trying to kill me, big bad news. Get the fuck up out my way when I pass through. I'm paranoid, tell me what the fuck they asked you. You fuck around with me and I'ma have to blast you. The CIA trying to kill me, big bad news. Fuck around with non-fiction, that's a bad move.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm only going to talk to you just for a minute or so this evening because I have some very sad news for all of you, and I think sad news for all of our fellow citizens and people who love peace all over the world. And that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis, Tennessee. Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice between fellow human beings. He died in the cause of that effort. In this difficult day, in this difficult time for the United States, it's perhaps well to ask what kind of a nation we are and what direction we want to move in. For those of you who are black, considering the evidence evidently is that there were white people who were responsible, you can be filled with bitterness and with hatred and a desire for revenge. We can move in that direction as a country, in greater polarization, black people amongst blacks and white amongst whites, filled with hatred toward one another. Or we can make an effort, as Martin Luther King did, to understand and to comprehend and replace that violence, that stain of bloodshed that is spread across our land, with an effort to understand, compassion, and love. For those of you who are black and are tempted to be filled with hatred and mistrust of the injustice of such an act against all white people, I would only say that I can also feel in my own heart the same kind of feeling. I had a member of my family killed, but he was killed by a white man. But we have to make an effort in the United States. We have to make an effort to understand, to get beyond or go beyond these rather difficult times. My favorite poem, my favorite poet was Aeschylus. He once wrote, "Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God." What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another, and a feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black. So I ask you tonight to return home, to say a prayer for the family, Martin Luther King, yeah, it's true, but more importantly to say a prayer for our own country, which all of us love, a prayer for understanding and that compassion of which I spoke. We can do well in this country. We will have difficult times. We've had difficult times in the past, but we will have difficult times in the future. It is not the end of violence. It is not the end of lawlessness, and it's not the end of disorder. But the vast majority of white people and the vast majority of black people in this country want to improve the quality of our life and want justice for all human beings that abide in our land, and dedicate ourselves to what the Greeks wrote so many years ago, to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. Let us dedicate ourselves to that and say a prayer for our country and for our people. Thank you very much.
And we're back.
And that was quite an eloquent speech.
Our government specializes in disorder and chaos.
Yeah, it was an elegant speech, but I think in some ways it was complete bullshit.
Yeah, because we didn't exactly get everything we wished, and he himself would suffer his fate with all that hatred.
Yeah, yeah. And what we saw was a travesty of justice, not justice. You know, a quick a quick turn to resolution and move on, you know. And even today, just to go back to what we were talking about before the break there, what would happen if we could roll back the clock and people knew the truth? You know, what would happen if even today, if people were aware that this happened, or that the media gave it any play? Because for years, and when I say years, I mean decades, you know, the term conspiracy theorist was applied to anybody who said, well, you know what, that just doesn't seem right. There's got to be more to the story than this. All of a sudden, you're demonized for being a critical thinker,
Right.
And the entire media would downplay it. So here is another one of those theories that turned out to be completely true. And some of the things that came out in the trial, and I think anybody with an above-average IQ would look at the trial evidence and deem it overwhelming. And so what they said, basically, James Earl Ray was a racist who hated Martin Luther King and everything he stood for. He rented a room across the hall. For some reason, he just knew where it was. And where Martin Luther King was staying, shot him and escaped. That was the basically the story. But what the trial found out was the 111th Military Intelligence Group was sent to King's location that day, and the usual police protection that was assigned to him was pulled away just before the assassination. Military intelligence nearby set up a group of photographers on the roof of a fire station with a clear view of Dr. King's balcony to basically photograph the entire incident to ensure that if there was somebody there that shouldn't have been there, they would have a record of it. So the 20th Special Forces Group had an 8-man sniper team at the assassination location that day. And the Memphis police ordered the scene where multiple witnesses reported that the source of the shooting cut down off their bushes that would have hid the sniper team. And so the entire scene was sanitized afterwards. And that's just the tip of the iceberg as far as the proof that was given for government collusion into this. And we have to ask, and I think that the question we have to ask ourselves is why, and then what are the real ramifications? I mean, go ahead and chime in here, but what do you think would happen if, let's say, CNN, ABC, CBS, and NBC all collectively ran as their top story that the government was indeed guilty of assassinating Martin Luther King all those many years ago? What do you think would happen?
Well, I would hope there would be an uprising. I just think that, you know, all that whole assassination and all the activities, like knowing about COINTELPRO and, you know, the destruction of movements happening at that time, you know, the bigger picture, I mean, it shows, you know, that our movements were being repressed. And it's the same now. There's you know, the reason why you don't hear about these things in mainstream news is because we are still being repressed. We're not supposed to know what's going on. We're not supposed to be active in, you know, these kinds of things. And so that's why we do know more about the Kardashians than we know about what our government's doing.
Absolutely. And my perception, if you would want to think that people would actually come together and to make a change, but I personally think that if they ran this for a day, nothing would happen. Nobody would do anything because even though they came out and said it, you know, there would be debate, there would be discussion, and most people, the only people that would care are hardcore activists, people in prison, people who have nothing to lose. You know, because the way that we've been conditioned, you know, we have a quote from a former CIA director, what's his name? I think it was William Casey, said, we will know we were successful when everything the American people believe is false. You know, and what they have done is through a program called Mockingbird, is basically taken over the media. And they form people's consciousness through the media, through music, through television shows, through movies, to believe that reality is something different than it really is. And we have grown. And if you look at the way the ruling classes are structured and the way that the common people are structured, they promote a form of collectivism that is very unpopular, and that is, you know, families stick together. And so what I mean by that is, for the ruling classes, you know, they marry people that that are conducive to strong families, keeping families together, basically empire building. Whereas, you know, on television movies, they actually go just the opposite of that. You know, they might glamorize it a little bit and like Downton Abbey or something like that, but they would never promote that type of living to the everyday person. And so what they've done over the last, you know, 100 years is basically destroy the family structure. And one of the ways they continuously do this is through the attack in the media and to target leaders like this, Martin Luther King. It wasn't just him being targeted; it was everybody being targeted.
Right.
And he was a what would you call it, a catalyzing force.
Right.
For good, and that's not in the best interest. That's not in their best interest.
Right.
And what would have happened had he lived and went on, and that's one guy that could have been elected president.
Right.
You know, but there's no way he would have fallen in. He's definitely not from the ruling classes, and he would not have fallen into their agenda. You know, so he actually that's why they had to take him out. And in the U.S. today, we have the same thing going on constantly. And one of this is going into the media. The media plays with line. This is where we have this myth of a free press, and nothing could be further from the truth. There might be some elements of it. I'm not saying everything is, you know, false. You know, you see something on the news, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily not happening. But they're not giving you the real full story, you know, of what's going on. And basically, the policy would be keep everybody in the dark, keep everybody guessing, keep everybody stupid, in the sense that they don't really know or understand the full picture, and put so much disinformation out there that it's just too difficult. You know, distract them with football games and basketball games and celebrities and, you know, the lottery and all this stuff, because then it's just, as long as people have food on the table, they have a job to go to, you know, they're relatively happy, they're not going to pay attention. You know, I meet people all the time, actually, who say, I don't follow the news at all. I don't follow politics at all. Leave that to other people, you know. And what will happen is they don't want to until they have to. And then by the time they have to, it's already too late for them to do anything. And what we see evolving around us, and this is a very unpopular opinion, but what I see evolving around us, and it has been going on for decades and decades and decades, for 100 years now, is the devolution of American society. You want to call it the enslavement of our society, further enslavement. And, you know, the black populations have been a huge target of this. If you look at how many people are actually in prison for bullshit reasons, it's a travesty.
Yeah.
You know, and if you look at, you know, this whole thing about, you know, we're going to war for fighting for freedom, you know, how free are we really? How much freer are we than other countries? And it's all part of an ongoing disinformation system, where it's also they've also created a structure through the media, through the demonization of critical thinking, to where you will become an outcast if you start talking about the truth. If you and you see it in the media all of the time, all the time, and that is the strategy. People often think that, oh, the government's incompetent. These people don't know what to do. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're very brilliant, actually. And these are brilliant people with all of the resources in the world to do anything that they want. Now, what their challenge is, they can't kill everybody. And, they can't, because they rely on us. We're one of the things that if there was nobody to rule, they wouldn't have any. They'd have to be doing all the work. So ultimately the power still lies within the populace.
Right.
But their weapon is information and disinformation. And what they want to do is keep people divided, keep people focused on self-preservation, on themselves, success, happiness. And then, meanwhile, all of that is slowly being eroded away. 80% of the American population now is at or close to living in poverty.
Yep.
And most people that live are 2 to 3 paychecks away from living on the street.
Oh yeah. I have a quote I want to share with you that's related to this. And it comes from the Good News Bible of 1977, and it states, "Keep your slaves busy or they will seek freedom." And that is totally what I'm thinking of while you're talking about this.
Absolutely. And in many ways, we're all slaves of the system, in the sense that you can't just quit the system. You can't I think most people want to work. They want to work hard. They want to find meaningful work, and they want to be rewarded justly for that. I really believe that is true for, a greater portion of the population. But we live in a society where sometimes that's just not even possible. Look at all the unemployment right now.
Right.
And it's not a matter of, people just sitting around doing nothing. It's like there's nothing to do.
Right. And then I just trip out. You tell young people to pursue higher education, and then they do so, and then they're in debt with all this student debt and no jobs upon graduation. It absolutely drives me insane. And
it's for the youth, and it's for everybody.
Yep.
It really is for everybody. And we're given this promise that if you work hard, that this is a land of opportunity. And there is a lot of opportunity compared to other places, but it's not like it is in the movies.
Right.
By any means. And the system is actually built against us to keep us enslaved in debt continuously, And but what we see happening right now politically in the world is pretty terrifying if people take the time. But most people don't want to take the time until it affects them personally, until they're so destitute that they have absolutely, they're sitting back and they're asking themselves, what the fuck is going on? How did this happen? Why is this happening to me? I've done everything right and nothing's working. That's when people generally start to wake up. So they have to keep a critical mass of the population placated and doing well, just so everybody else can slowly whittle away, and they do this through the media. It's one of their strongest tools. So we're going to show an example of this next, and I just happened to catch. I don't really watch a lot of commercial TV, but since I've been on this trip, I've seen more of it. And
you're in the in crowd now.
What's that?
You're in the in crowd now.
Yeah, welcome to the dark side.
You have any knowledge of the Niners getting their asses kicked by Seattle yesterday?
Yeah, I actually did watch that.
I was hurting.
And I'm not against. I think sport can be a catalyzing event, that it can bring people together. I enjoyed playing sports as a kid, you know, but sometimes too much emphasis put on it. You know, people will pay more attention to sport than what's affecting their livelihood. And I think that's where, and Mark Dice recently released a video talking about how the professional sports was actually created by the ruling classes to distract people from critical thinking, to put all their time and effort into something they can cheer for rather than something, you know, that's going to affect the bigger picture. But, you know, the way the media works is they put forth a why and they just repeat it over and over and over again. And we're meant to believe that like if you watch Superman and you see these young reporters coming out saying, hey, I've got this great story, we're going to put this in, we're going to uncover corruption, we're going to fight for justice. That's the idea we have what the media is doing, and that all this stuff. But in reality, and there may be a little bit of that, but in reality what happens is you have an editor who's taking orders from the top to continuously promote a particular position. And that position is what they call, you know, talking point. Recently, there was a CNN. We all know that CNN stands for Communist News Network, right? and it was actually, I still believe this. I actually don't have any proof of this that I could really point out the specifics. I do believe that it is a result of Operation Mockingbird, and it was particularly started as the war. I used to call this, when I was in the Navy, we called it the War Channel. Want to see what's going on in the war? Turn in CNN. You know, and recently there was a reporter by the name of Amber Lyons, who was an award-winning journalist with CNN, who was ordered to report fake stories and report and delete unfriendly stories adverse to the Obama administration, and construct stories in a specific manner to support the Obama administration, leaving out her own personal reporter integrity. And she was ordered to do this. And now, when she said no, she was fired. She left. And now she's sort of taking on the role as a news whistleblower.
Good.
Coming out
Awesome.
and exposing the truth. And unfortunately, you know, that's not going to get a lot of play on CNN.
Of course, of course.
And they still have the masses, you know. And as long as they have the masses, they can say anything they want. They can say anything they want, and they repeat it over and over and over again. That's why if you tune in to see the CNN, you're going to see the same stories all day long.
Right.
You're going to say the same 3 or 4 things all day long. And even though if you go to Facebook, you go to alternative media, you see important stuff going on worldwide, you know, it might get a mention at that, but mostly they're just going to stick to the dribble, and they want you to meet, and these people play both sides of the fence continuously. Mm-hmm. So they play the liberal side and the conservative side. So you've got, let's say you've got the brain-dead zombie do-gooders in the Bay Area who think that, you know, screw the Republicans, you know, we're environmentalists, we care about people, you know, and what they don't realize is they're buying into Democracy Now!, they're buying into the ACLU, they're buying in, they listen to NPR, they listen to the BBC, they think they're enlightened, they think they're progressive, but in reality, they're just being fed a different formula. And I certainly fit into that group for most of my life. I was never really a hardcore Democrat or anything like that, but, you know, that's where I got my news, and that's where I bought into the paradigm of the world is mysterious, and, you know, we're still evolving as a species, and things aren't perfect, but there's a lot of good people out there fighting for it, and that's just not the case. It really isn't. So, hey, we're going to play this clip that came up. I saw this on, I think it was Conan O'Brien, and he played this clip showing how news is scripted. News is scripted, and it's not scripted in the sense that there's a producer at every station who's doing their own thing. Everything comes from the top. There's like a giant pyramid,
Right.
and at the top of the pyramid are 6 companies who own all the media.
Mm-hmm.
And these 6 companies, they're not in competition with each other. They're in collusion with each other. So, so this clip is actually taken from different news stations around the country reporting on one story. So go ahead and cue that up. We'll go ahead and play that.
Okay.
In mainstream media reports over time, you've likely noticed how a lot, if not all, of the talking points are extremely similar, if not exactly the same, and some actually sound like they're being read off the same teleprompter or card. Now, I don't know about you, but I definitely do not watch a lot of television. However, I did find this video by Conan O'Brien on his show Conan on TBS online that was shared with me by a reader, and it perfectly demonstrates the tactics and theater of the mainstream media. With the massive crew of Conan, his team members were able to piece together some mainstream media reporter footage that was pushing the same line about gas prices, where it's truly so much else going on that's more important, from drone strikes to sweeping gun control that we all know about. But notice how they repeat the exact same thing in the video that follows. I'm going to play it right now. It's completely pure theater.
A lot of people think the big news stories today are the snowstorm that's hitting the Midwest or the looming federal budget cuts. But judging by local news, there's apparently an even bigger story that's sweeping the nation right now. Check it out.
Well, if you filled up your gas tank lately, then you don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you gas prices are back on the rise. You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you gas prices are on the rise. I know.
Now, is that telling or what? And it makes a lot of sense when you consider the fact that most mainstream news channels are owned by a select few number of corporations that own the dissemination of information. So when it comes down to it, it's really all theater, and this report essentially breaks it down like few others can because of his team size. They can gather all those clips, and there's a lot more where that came from.
What a coincidence!
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, and go ahead and cue up the other one from the trial. So halfway through the trial, the lawyer, Dennis Pepper, makes some pretty, I think, powerful statements about the media, and it's kind of funny when people would much rather embrace a comfortable lie. They want the beautiful lie. You know, it's something that if they can continue to propel the facade, even though deep down they know it's wrong. As long as they've got somebody out there telling it to them, they're going to go with it. And the Nazis were fantastic at this. They understood this and refined it to an art form that we now call media. Mm-hmm. And Joseph Mengele, actually one of his famous quotes was, "The more we do to you, the less you seem to believe we are doing it." And he was one of the Nazis that helped kill millions of people.
Wow.
And they not only did they not, people have to realize that they did not only, the Holocaust was not just about the people who ended up in concentration camps. It was about everybody in the country. You know, even the people that were of German Aryan descent, they were still targeted in the sense that they had to not believe, even though they saw something was going on. There were some that just didn't care, but then there was others that just had to put the blinders on.
Mm-hmm.
They had to go to work every day. They had to manufacture stuff. They had to keep the economy going. And you could have walked around in Nazi Germany in 1940 and told people, hey, your government's, enslaving a large part of the population. They're targeting people who are exposing them, and they're building these camps, slave labor camps, and they're enslaving people and killing them for simply being there. And you know what they would have told you? They would have said, oh, you're just, you're just being paranoid. You're just a conspiracy theorist. They would have said, our government would never do that. Look around. Everything is fine. There's less homelessness. People are working. People are happy. There's nothing to worry about. And what we see, what's really terrifying is, part of the Street for Peace show when we started this 2 years ago was to facilitate the opening of a museum dedicated to the concept of peace in San Francisco, and we were successful in that to a degree. We did actually open, Sergio and I there did open a museum, but the flack we took, where I thought we would have community support, we had just the opposite.
Mm.
And what I did during this process was I began a very in-depth discovery on the history of peace and war. And what came out of it, one of the things we were targeted, one of the first things they told us when we got there was, hey, the CIA runs this place, you guys got to watch it. And I was told, because we were in a public building, the War Memorial Veterans Building.
Right.
And they took that with a grain of salt, and my position on it was, well, hey, CIA, and this shows you how naive I was just a few years ago about some of this stuff. And my initial thoughts were, hey, CIA, we're on the same side. They're fighting for peace. We're fighting for peace, and fighting for peace. That's kind of funny, though, right? And that if we should be working together, but they didn't want that. They wanted conflict. They wanted to control everything and not have us there at all. Mm. And that really started fueling okay, what is this exactly? Going in and looking at the hidden history, the stuff they're not going to teach you in the books. And what I found was terrifying, actually, in the sense that everything that I thought, I wouldn't say that everything I knew was wrong. I would just say everything I knew was only a piece of the puzzle. It was only partially true. And there was the key things were the things that were not true. Sort of like the Gulf Tonkin incident, in which America fabricated getting into the Vietnam War, and then the reasons why we go to war. The thing about fighting for freedom and all this. There's within the alternative media, which we're a part of here. You'd want to think that if people really knew what was going on, they would come together and join forces and try to make the world a better place. But in reality, that's not the case. I've come to the conclusion, in reality, most people just don't give a shit. And until it affects them personally, they could, see people starving in the street. They could see people getting murdered in the street. Their friends could be being robbed blind, taken away, beaten to death, and they wouldn't lift a finger until they came after them. That is.
And by then it's too late.
And by then it's too late. And history repeats itself, and we see the same thing evolving in America. If anybody does a really in-depth study on what happened in Germany, not the propaganda, not the History Channel version, but what actually really happened, including all the controversial, alternative media stuff. And then sometimes you have to sift through what's bullshit and not. But most people just want to be spoon-fed the lie and say that, oh, that's the way it's always been, that's the way it was, that's what I learned as a kid, that's what my parents believed, that's the way it was, we're the good guys, You know, both sides of the war always think they're the good guys, and what we see evolving in America is a step-by-step exactly what happened in Germany. Not kind of, sort of, not almost like, but exactly. They're even using the same words: homeland security, terrorism, save the children, take away the guns. And part of that is in warfare, there's this thing called PSYOP, psychological operations. It's how you condition the populace for war. Because if you go into a war, you can't destroy everything, because that would defeat the purpose of having the war. And so if you look in Germany, one of the things that happened where they were bombing, there were selective bombing things that American companies had an interest in was off target. We see this happening. If you see what's happened in Israel and Palestine over the last almost 100 years now, you can see an articulated war. You know, it's a piecemeal war, one little bit at a time. And you know, even Hitler said, it's easy to take over people. You just do it step by step. I'm paraphrasing. You just do it a little bit at a time. If you do it all at once, they're going to revolt. But if you take away stuff just a little bit at a time, then they won't care. Yeah. And that's what we see happening here. Little by little, stuff is taken away. But it's what I think, if I'm going to write the history of the world, I would look back and say that World War III began on September 11th of 1991, and it was a covert war on America. That triggered what is going on now in a covert war, and it's an incremental step by step. You know, I do. It looks like it's getting more hot now, and what I mean by that, you know, and this isn't just me thinking this. You know, Lindsey Graham, who's a senator, made a public statement on the Senate floor that the United States is the new battleground. And what we've seen is a militarization of police forces. Now, you've seen the MRAPs, the military armored vehicles, going to big cities, right? Yeah. So like, you get terrorism, and where's that going to strike? It's going to strike in New York, L.A., San Francisco, the big stuff, right? And so you can think, well, you know what? Maybe the SWAT team does need an MRAP for that. But it's not just there. It's also small towns. I just saw something on InfoWars that a new wave of MRAPs are being distributed to small towns. And I just happened to pick up the Sunday paper where I'm at, which is Pocatello, Idaho, you know, and on the front page, it's regional sheriffs to show off $240,000 armored vehicle, you know, and this is the last time there was a hostage situation in Pocatello. They talked the guy out of it, and it was a domestic dispute, and they talked the guy out of it with a pack of cigarettes and a beer.
Your tax money at work.
and I mean the crime here. I mean, there's, you know, you get a break in every once in a while. Most of the crime around here is alcohol related, and there's no terrorism going on in Pocatello, Idaho. You know, but we see a militarization of the police force. Why? Because they are expecting there's going to be a critical tipping point where people are just going to say, this is fucked up. And we're not going to pay our taxes, and we're not going to go to work until this thing is resolved. And that's where we're going to see a breakdown in society, and which is why they're preparing for civil unrest nationwide. You know, and having served in the military, I served in many drills and some real stuff, and there's a definite difference. And what they're preparing for is not a drill. And so people really need to wake up. Unfortunately, we're just a little small show that most people, you know, if they listen to us, they might say, oh, that's interesting, and then forget about it. They're not going to share it with other people. Because why? They don't want to be cast out. They don't want to look like the anti-American, anti-patriotic. They don't want to be demonized the way that they view other people the way they have demonized other people in the past for saying the exact thing, even if they believe it.
Right.
Even if they see it coming, they would rather keep their blinders on. And that is by design. They have been, the technical term would be brainwashed. And it's through continuous exposure of media and just society in general. You know, what is the most important thing in our society? Money.
Right.
That's what people say is the most important thing. If you lose your money, you lose your friends. and if you have no money, your friends have no money.
Right? You don't even have romance. No romance without finance.
That is true, and that is actually what we've seen break down. And if you look at what's been happening in Palestine over the last 50 years, it's a form of economic genocide. You take away your ability to make a living. Who wants to have kids and live happily ever after?
Right.
If it's hell? You know, life is hell for the majority of the people in America today. And the reason why it continues to be that way is because a certain part of the population, the privileged class, still have that privilege. And we see a widening disparity between the haves and have-nots. And even though we've seen things like Occupy, things like come out, there's enough people that are still relatively happy. They just don't want to rock the boat. You know, they're not going to let anybody else in their boat either. And they're just going to ride the waves until they're dead, you know. And we've seen this report, you know, this cycle of society has been going on for thousands of years. And so the really have this. Go ahead, Sergio. Go ahead and play that clip from the mid clip. It's only about 4 minutes long.
Okay.
And this guy, the lawyer, his name is Pepper. It's kind of funny, he's a doctor, so his name is Dr. Pepper.
Oh, that's too bad.
But he makes some very and this is the mark. Now think about who the family would represent. Who the family would choose to represent them in a civil case for Martin Luther King's murder trial. Do you think they're just going to go out there and pick some guy who's willing to do it? No. They're going to find the finest mind they can possibly find to do this. And they have the resources. People are going to want to step up and be a part of it. And so go ahead and play that, and we'll be back in a minute.
You heard Bill Schaff on the stand for a long time talking about media distortion and the use of media for propaganda. And he gave you the history of how it's developed particularly over 20th century America, but of course it's a long-standing activity throughout history in older nations than this. But Schaff took you painstakingly through that history down to the present time, where he dealt with the way the media handled Martin Luther King, how he handled his opposition to the war in Vietnam, how he was attacked because of that opposition to the war. And then he moved on, and this similar, comparable attacks on the King family since they decided that they wanted the truth out in this case. And they decided that James Earl Ray was entitled to a trial. Similar media treatment happened to them, happened to Martin. Similar loss of contributions and money for the work that happened to Martin back in those days. The same thing. Bill Schaff led you through that. There were a couple of instances where he referred to the huge ownership and control of media entities all over the world by the Central Intelligence Agency. It's a matter of public records, appeared in congressional hearings, Senate hearings, which most people don't read, don't know anything about. And of course, the media only covers in sparse fashion, because it's contrary to their interest to show that great numbers of newspapers, radio stations, television stations may in fact be actually owned by the Central Intelligence Agency in this country as well as elsewhere. He talked about the numbers of actual agents who work for media companies, who are placed in positions, in network television company positions, in newspaper company positions, on newspaper editorial board positions. And if you see the history of how national security cases are covered, and this is one, you will be amazed that some of the most liberal columnists, writers, respected journalists, Pulitzer Prize winners, who have all the liberal credentials, when it comes to this kind of case, they all of a sudden totally with the government. Because national security cases are a different ballgame. Ambassador Young ran into one at one point in an airport and said to him, "How can you do this, Tony, about this case? You have great credentials in every other area. What is it about this case?" And the response was, "You'd be happy to know my wife agrees with you." And that was it. That was the end of the response. The point is, on these cases, there is a special type of treatment that is given. It's important to understand that across the board, and that explains a lot of what we're talking about. Example, column 1, New York Times, November. The article is here. Alton, Illinois bank robbery. Wendell Walls Jr., the Times wrote this whole piece, fabric, whole cloth. That Ray brothers robbed a bank in Illinois, and that's where James got his money, and therefore there's no railroad. The problem was that the article said that the Times had conducted a special investigation that paralleled that of the House Select Committee and that of the House Select Committee and that of the FBI. And all three investigations indicated this was the case. Case closed. This is where Ray got his money. The problem is, they never talked to the chief of police in Oklahoma. They never talked to the president of the bank in Oklahoma. There was no investigation. And when those people were talked to by myself or by Jerry Ray, who went down there to turn himself in and said, "I'm charged. You think I did this? I'm prepared to turn myself in." The guy said, "Go away. You've never been a suspect." Isn't that amazing? Out of a whole cloth. But it appears, and that's the mindset that the people have.
swallow everything. Always simpletons or pretending. We got no plan.
This is your moment of clarity from LeeCamp.net. I got to admit, today's episode makes me feel weird. It's kind of bizarre to feel like you're announcing major breaking news that should change everything people know about the United States, and that news is 13 years old. Over 13 years ago, the only trial ever held concerning the murder of Martin Luther King Jr. was concluded. And no, it wasn't done in someone's basement under the cover of tinfoil hats. There wasn't anyone with the word Illuminati carved into their forehead. And no, this wasn't an issue of Marvel Comics' Bizarro World, where Spider-Man is a gay Latino man and Superman is a mustachioed dude who refuses to fight crime on the Sabbath. This was a real, live trial between the King family and the conspirators who killed Martin Luther King. This was real. In 1999, a jury found U.S. government agencies guilty of assassinating MLK on a balcony in Memphis in 1968. After hearing from 70 witnesses, including Lloyd Jowers, who owned Jim's Grill, from which the shot was fired, and assisted the sniper, the jury took less than an hour to decide that 1. Multiple government agencies were responsible for the murder. 2. James Earl Ray, the man who we've always been told pulled the trigger, had nothing to do with it. And 3. The U.S. media is a fucking stain on the soul of this country, a tarnish so deep and dark it makes the Bermuda Triangle look like a happy day on the slip and slide. James Earl Ray only signed a confession because he was told it was the only way he could get a trial. Once he realized he would not get a trial, he recanted his confession and maintained his innocence to his death. Even Coretta Scott King and the King family said he was innocent. On the other hand, the 20th Special Forces Group was shown to have a sniper team at the location of King's murder. This is significant because snipers are good at putting bullets through people from a large distance away. It just so happens that Martin Luther King had a bullet go through him from a large distance away. What are the odds? Something tells me the 8-man sniper team wasn't at Jim's Grill that day for the cooking. Jim's Grill, our barbecue ribs are trigger finger looking good. So you're telling me, under U.S. law, the U.S. government has been found to have assassinated one of the 10 most courageous, most beloved American leaders, and most people in this country still don't know it? I can't turn on a TV without hearing that Lance Armstrong is guilty of using drugs, or Kristen Stewart is guilty of sleeping with the guy, or Manti Te'o is guilty of believing a Skype video of a stack of clothing is a real live girlfriend. Todd Aiken's guilty of believing God raped women, and Mel Gibson hates Jews, and Lindsay Lohan said "Bliggity blue." Everybody in this country knows every step, breath, spasm, and orgasm that involves Justin Bieber, Dan Marino, and Anthony Weiner. Can't fucking avoid it. Can't not know it even if you try. Yet this government, our own goddamn government, was found guilty in a court of law of straight up murdering a peaceful disobedience icon, a legend who led the American people out of the dark ages, a modern day prophet, number 5 on the list of greatest Americans behind only George Washington, Ben Franklin, Carrie Underwood, and Palky from Perfect Strangers. The government was found guilty by a jury in 1999, and we never heard a fucking word of it, never heard a sound. To this day, you're more likely to see a news anchor breastfeed an adult man in a diaper live on the news at 5 than you are to see them mention the government's assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. In the words of Gandhi, what the fuck is going on around here? And that is your breaking holy shit, how could this happen news from 13 years ago. And that's your moment of clarity. In the description below, you'll find links if you'd like to read more about this topic. Also, help Moment of Clarity spread. If you're on Twitter, you can just go to donateyouraccount.com/LeeCamp, and you will be able to sign up to donate just 1 tweet per day or per week to Moment of Clarity. You don't lose control of your account. It doesn't cost anything. It's quick and easy and self-explanatory, and it'll be a huge tool to help Moment of Clarity grow. Thanks. Keep fighting.
No plans at all. Evil man's always transcending. Follow like sheep, swallow everything.
Hallelujah. I have my moment of clarity. My sinuses are totally cleared.
Yeah, the travesty in this is people really don't care. They really don't. Some people do to an extent, and some people will go out and protest. Some people might change their lifestyle a little bit, but if they looked at and understood the full picture, the horror of it, just the complete mind fuck that you have to go through to admit and to come to the realization of the world we actually live in, it's so far away from what people are willing to do, how much people are willing to change, that they would rather look at the facts and throw them away and believe in the lie, even when they're presented with it. You can go to Google right now and you will see Martin Luther King's face right over there. Billions of people today are going to see Martin Luther King's face, and there's no school for Martin Luther King because it's Martin Luther King Day, and everybody's. What really happened is they came out, they assassinated him, and they gave us a holiday in appeasement, and just move on to the next thing. And the way this is structured, is people mostly their view of the intelligence network and how it works is formed through TV and movies. Some of you may not know this, but if there is you can't go to Hollywood and make a movie about the CIA without the CIA being involved. All these television shows that you see on TV with the FBI and the CIA and that, they have a person on site that will approve the script. And if there's a problem in the script, they'll change it. The same thing with these movies. You see these movies that are using helicopters and all this, multi-million-dollar equipment. The reason why they're able to do that, these are taxpayer-subsidized movies because we're paying for all that stuff. But the military gets their sign-off on all of us, has to sign off on the script. And that's how they're able to get this stuff for sometimes free. If it's a big enough movie, they'll get it for free. So how many people have actually met a CIA agent or an FBI agent? Very few.
I'm pretty sure I have, maybe without exactly knowing that they were.
Right, exactly, because they're not going to come out. That's the nature of intelligence. But there's really an intelligence network worldwide. It's not just in the United States. And if you go back and actually look into CIA, FBI, those are not American organizations. They're federal organizations, which the federal government is not American. Literally, it's based in the District of Columbia, which is not under American jurisdiction. So they write their own laws. And they're not accountable to the American people at all. And so the way it's really worked is the way the CIA works. It is everywhere. It is massive. The single largest organization in the world is the Pentagon, and the people who are connected to that. But the way this really works is, and you heard this guy in the trial, he hit that on that, is the CIA, FBI, they have people, there are different kinds of agents. You have agents that are full-time with the CIA, that they basically go to work, they have their ID card, and that's where they go every day. And then you also have assets. And what assets are, there's different types of assets, but an asset is somebody who works in conjunction with the CIA, but also has a regular job. So they might be an executive at a company. They could be the CEO or head of a nonprofit. And a lot of it would be the do-gooders. They'd be out there, ACL, part of the ACLU, and an attorney fighting for human rights, stuff like that. But they all take their orders, they all take their directions from Central Intelligence Office, and they're continuously informing them of things coming on. And their main goal, I call it the 3 Ds: deceive, disrupt, and discredit. And they do it society-wide. If there's a big organization, if there's a powerful component in there, they're going to have people there. It's that big. And it's going to be through media, it's going to be through business, it's going to be through nonprofits, it's going to be in the arts, it's going to be in media. I can guarantee you I've had this discussion with some people at Radio Valencia about this, and they think I'm full of shit. But speaking from a position of ignorance, because I've seen that happen firsthand, and there are people at Radio Valencia that are part of it, because we are located less than a mile from a big, brand new, state-of-the-art federal building, and it would be a complete dereliction of duty for us not to be on their radar, and for them not to have somebody inside doing exactly that, deceiving people from what their true agenda is, disrupting normal operations by seemingly just being part of the process, and then discrediting anybody who could be a positive force to change.
And it's fair to say that 3 Ds in your mouth are very, very bad for your health.
Yeah. And again, they're the CIA people are usually going to be the volunteers, the people who want to be involved. They're going to always have a smile on the face. They're going to be buying drinks for everybody. They're going to be the exact type of person you would want to be part of your organization. And that's how they do it. And if anybody doesn't believe that, just look at your history. Go back. San Francisco is a hotbed of political activity. It always has been. And go back to the beat poets. You know, they talk about Ginsburg and Kerouac. They'll talk about some of the events they used to have. There would always be a CIA guy in the back, or FBI, with the crew cut, looking, observing. And then when the things got really hot with the anti-war movement there in Berkeley and San Francisco, what they found out afterwards was the CIA would move in and they would have people come in volunteering, and they found that it was the leaders of the CIA that were actually reading these anti-war things. But what they were really doing was instigating crisis within these organizations and disrupting them.
Yep.
And they do that everywhere. And the people would rather, instead of having a rational conversation about the chances of this happening, they would really just say, oh, it's just not happening. Just forget about it. Just move along. And that's where the discrediting comes in. They will discredit activists. They will discredit people who are critical thinkers. They will discredit people that have leadership potential and disrupt their ability to be part of the system. And it's usually through lies, innuendo, and sabotage. Our website at Radio Valencia has over 4,000 spams on it, spam comments. So we're continuously getting hit with this. But if you were to talk about this to somebody, they're just, oh, it's just a coincidence. Just forget about it. Now, one of the hardest things you can do, this is the real mind fuck, though, is this stuff is going on, but how do you recognize and how do you discern from that and just the normal course of business? So we have, over the last couple of weeks, we've had, and we've talked about this on the show, and I made a prediction a couple of weeks ago that there was going to be a major crisis in FEMA Area 3 that would require Homeland Security, Department of Homeland, FEMA, and National Guard to be called out, boots on the ground. And guess what? It happened. And it was a water crisis. It didn't happen how I thought it would happen, but it did happen. And now we have this huge water crisis that, again, it's the facts are being obscured. We talked about this in last week's show. The problem is much bigger than they would ever admit to. Mm-hmm. And there is a reason for that. And then what happens this week is water crisis in California again. It's happened before. Jessica, why don't you've been doing some research on that. You want to tell our listeners what's going on in California with the water? And now what we're seeing is a nationwide, it hasn't affected everybody in the nation, but it is from East Coast to West Coast, we're having a water crisis. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, well, I find it very interesting that when this announcement was made a couple of days ago that it's asking for a voluntary 20% reduction in use of water. And, on my end, I feel like there's always been a water crisis. I mean, a lot of parts of California are desert. we're very wasteful in general when it comes to water. There's no really conservation, culturally in the United States. But there is in other countries when you visit, whether they need to or not. Water is pretty much rationed, right? And so, California is like the breadbasket of pretty much half of the United States, providing, the food, vegetables, the nuts, and that kind of thing. So water obviously is very crucial to our state. But for me, on my end, having done a lot of work, with polluting corporations, a lot of that water really is like, going back to profits, at all costs. It doesn't matter what the externalities are. A lot of the water is used by power plants, refineries, a lot of industry, and even the agricultural industry can be deemed a polluting industry because we're talking industrial agriculture. And so, that for me is a huge issue on top of, you also have, the global warming issue and access to clean water for a lot of communities, even within California, is really an issue. So, I've been reading more about the announcement, but then also kind of like the backdoor plans behind this whole announcement, where what you probably didn't hear in the mainstream media, unless you were digging for stuff, is that Governor Brown is actually made the California Environmental Quality Act, which is the law that protects environment, people, plants, animals, pretty much suspended while this drought was announced.
Bingo.
Yeah, exactly. And my issue with that, working in environmental justice, is when you suspend a law that protects people and the environment, it's pretty much business as usual. It's kind of like an all access pass to doing whatever you want in terms of industry. And that means that they don't have to disclose any information on what a project is about. There's no need for scientific analysis, any mitigation. They won't take public comment. So this is actually, to me, pretty alarming. It turns out that Governor Brown is pushing for this tunnel to be built, pretty much to funnel water from Sacramento into the California aqueduct, which is one of the main aqueducts that would feed into the Central Valley, but also into Southern California. So this whole issue on the environmental end is coming up about this being actually a water grab. And so that to me is alarming and obviously something I want to, look into more. So that's a lot of what I've learned recently since this announcement that was made by the governor. It's business oriented, and it comes at the cost of environmental health, of our health. And definitely we need water, obviously, for households and individuals, but oftentimes when you hear of something like this, they'll use that as an excuse, but really it's about business and industry, and having our environmental laws suspended is very, very alarming to me. So that's one thing that I would note,
Does the environmental laws include chemical testing for water that's used in
any analysis?
Potable water?
Yeah, they don't have to. So let's go to fracking. Fracking is a huge issue in California right now. That is something that I would be concerned about. There are two shale formations in Central and Southern California that these fracking industries want to access to, right? And the fracking industry is already unregulated, and they are a huge water polluter, but they don't have to divulge the type of chemicals that they use. And when you are suspending the very California law that's protecting us from these kinds of operations, that is a huge red flag right there. That they're going to be able to frack, expose, our soil and water to chemicals that they don't even have to name, and we won't ever know until, again, going back to it's too late, and yeah, so that is a huge concern.
And this also comes along when all of this controversy about the Fukushima radiation is coming in, and it's being detected nationwide, which means it's getting into our food system through rain, irrigation, things like that, and this is not something you can filter out.
Yeah.
and so we have to really look at what does this mean for society as a whole. Does this mean we're all of a sudden, our health care is going to be going down the toilet society-wide, and the government's just going to say, well, we just don't know. It's just all this mysterious stuff. We just have no idea.
Yeah.
And that is something that I've talked about before, and it's why the government lies,
yeah.
and why they have to, and kind of, thank you, why they have to. And the reason why they have to is because people have been brought up to be brain-dead zombies that have to be force-fed everything, and they're little more than, conscious slaves, if you will,
right.
in the sense that their independence does really not exist. They've been bred to be dependent. And so what happens, let's just say, hypothetically, the government comes out and says there's a real problem with Fukushima radiation. Radiation levels are 500 to 1,000 times higher than normal. People should take precautions. What would happen? Every single person in California, after they were done shitting themselves, would call up their local government and say, well, what are you going to do for it? How are you going to make this better for it? This is our fault. And they're not going to go out and buy gas masks and educate themselves on potassium iodide and how to actually combat this stuff. They're going to go to the government. Then what would actually happen is they would have to put warnings out. You cannot eat the fish. All of a sudden, you see an entire segment of the economy collapse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big segment, because what would happen would be all the fisheries would instantly take a dive. You'd have huge unemployment. Restaurants would stop serving fish. And you'd have this ripple effect, because people would just not stop eating fish. They would stop going to restaurants. They would say, well, if you've got radiation in the fish, what else is radiated? What else? And you would see a complete overnight collapse in society.
Mm-hmm.
And then what would they do? And that's a question I can't answer, but I mean, that's what I can understand.
Yeah, well, we can see from history and recent history that the government, when they should step in, often doesn't, right?
Say that again?
That I said that in recent events, we've learned that when the government should step in to help people, they don't. And people have to fend for themselves. And that's a huge thing I learned from watching the whole Katrina disaster happen in the South.
Yeah, they're not there to help.
No, they're there to militarize, but they're not there to help.
Right. And this is where they're very effective though in the disruption part, because not only do they not want to help really, but they don't want people to help themselves. I tried to call a meeting at Radio Valencia. It's like, hey, there's some serious stuff going on. We should be talking about this stuff as a community, and we should have a plan of action for emergencies. What happens if there's a really emergency? And you know what? People didn't want to talk about it. That's just too serious to talk about. all we're really interested in is concerts and having fun and having shows and listening to music, which I think is fantastic. I love doing all that too.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you have to have a slice of reality built into it, and people just don't want that. They don't want to prepare for the future. They want to hope that everything is going to be fine. They think that because nothing bad happened yesterday, then nothing bad will happen today. And since nothing bad happened today, nothing bad is going to happen tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But we are being conditioned. You know that during World War II, there was a whole series of false flag events that the Nazis put forth to justify the invasion of Poland. Guess how many there were? If you read the history books and the History Channel version, it makes it sound like one or two. Guess how many?
I don't know.
Over 50. There were over 50 individual false flag events.
Wow.
And they had to condition people little by little, and it's happening. And I was also right. I said something's going to happen in San Francisco that is just weird, and it happened at the Chinese embassy. We had some guy come up and pour some gasoline and torch the embassy on fire. And what they said, and again, this is where the CIA creates a culture of crazy. You know, and one of the first things Operation Paperclip did, Operation Paperclip was when they whitewashed Nazi criminals and brought them to the United States. They whitewashed their records, brought them to the United States, and put them in NASA. They put them in the CIA. They put them in various groups, and a big part of it was the psychiatric community. And they wrote this book that is basically the Bible of the psychiatric community called the DSM, Diagnostic and Statistics Manual. And what they basically did is demonize, they identified all human emotion and action, and then correlated that to an illness, a mental illness. So anybody that wants to have a mental illness can have a mental illness. And anybody can be seen crazy for whatever they're doing. It doesn't even matter what they're doing. There's something for it. And so they created this culture of crazy that's perpetuated through media, and the medical industry. So you can't watch an hour of TV without seeing an ad for some kind of psychiatric drug. And they create this culture of crazy, and
it's crazy consumption.
Yeah. But like Napoleon said, history is a fable agreed upon. But what they create this thing, and then what happens? So you have to ask yourself, what is terrorism? You have a guy going to a Chinese embassy, torching it on fire, and that's not terrorism. They did not even, and this is a concerted effort among Bay Area media to basically say it wasn't terrorism. It was a crazy guy hearing voices in Chinese, But why isn't it terrorism? Who asked that question? This is obviously a political target, and relations with China are not that great at the moment. And this is basically a conditioning. We see some wars ramping up worldwide. And John Kerry gave, we have this thing, we talked about this before, blood moons that are coming up that have a strong correlation to war and invasion. And it could not be other than deliberate. And we've got another 4 blood moons, the last one, I think ever happened. And it begins in April. And last July, John Kerry made the announcement that there had to be peace in the Middle East by April. I think he called it the final agreement. And if I had to make a prediction, I would say that's where the World War III will be going hot. We're going to see an escalation in forces, American forces throughout the Middle East, including Iran, Syria. There'll be massive war. We'll also see stuff, we already see it flowing out right now. China just deployed 100,000 troops. They're taking over the Philippines, a portion of the Philippines. In the South Japanese islands are in contestment as well. And so we see stuff brewing on both sides, in both Asia and in the Middle East, and in America, every war has two fronts. You have the war front, and then you have the front at home. The front at home is a PSYOP war that has to keep the moms happy. It has to keep the parents placated that what they're sending their children off to war and die for is the just cause. It's a good and just cause, and it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And that's the war we see brewing at home right now with this preparation. And we've seen it going on since 9/11, terrorism. You can't get away from that. And it's all bullshit. It's all PSYOP. It's all psychological conditioning to support the overall agenda, the hidden agenda. And, we're probably going to see an end to the internet as it is right now with TPP going through, and our access to information is going to be severely limited, as well as resources. And I've said this before, is that, for most people, particularly in our team, wouldn't say that they believe in the Bible and prophecy. That they don't think that the Bible is the Word of God that's going to come true, and that no matter what, you can't do that. And whether you believe that or not, the reality is there are very wealthy people who are using the Bible as a playbook. Mm-hmm. They want that to come true, and they are making it come true so they can point to their followers and say, hey, look, we're just doing God's will, and this is what God said, this is what's happened so far. We're just following the plan. This is God's plan, not our plan. And what that plan says, there's going to be, and I would certainly fall into that non-Christian, didn't believe in the Bible my whole life. But when you start studying, particularly Revelation, put it in the context of the bigger world, it's like, holy shit, these people are trying to make this come true. and you look at it, it says there's going to be 7 years, what they call the tribulation. And then what comes out of it is basically a one world government, new world order. And a lot of people think that 7-year tribulation begins in April. And I hope I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong about all this stuff. But I'm right too much to think that there's nothing to it at all. And the big question is, what do we do about it? Mm-hmm. What can you do about it? And I think the only thing is just come together as a people and at least begin an open discussion that doesn't result in arguments and demonization, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think? We got just a couple minutes left. Any last thoughts, words?
Yeah.
I would probably go back and revisit MLK's words and find a solution. I mean, a man who symbolized peace, whose day we're celebrating. We should really look into it seriously.
Mm-hmm. And the travesty about all this stuff is, like, I think in general people are pretty peaceful, but when you get into the who's controlling everything, the powers that be that are out there they say that they're trying to, negotiate peace, really don't want that. Because if there was a peaceful company or communities that could self-regulate, they could self-police, why would we need them? And the reason they live extravagant lifestyles, they can do whatever they want. They're born into money. They don't have to ever worry about where their next meal is coming from or paying the rent or where they're going to live. They have everything their entire lives. And who would want to give that up?
Yeah. Who wants to do the scramble of trying to figure that out every day?
And that's the lie that everybody's been told, is that's what you need to strive for. That's what we need to idolize. That's why we idolize. That's why, somebody that gets caught, selling a little weed is going to go to jail for life. But if you rob thousands of people out of their retirement and make millions of dollars in the process, you're a hero.
Yeah, it's sick.
Anyway, that's enough to do for today. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
All right.
Have a good one.
All right, we'll be back next week. Hopefully I'll be in studio, and there will be a next week to come back to. And thanks for joining us again, Jessica. And
all right.
we'll be posting more. We'll have links and posts at screamforpeace.net pretty soon. And either today or late tomorrow, we'll send a note out. Leave your email address at screamforpeace.net for updates. And we'll leave you with a little information. I think while we're rolling right into the next show, I'll just say goodbye. And we'll talk to you next week. Peace.
2, 3.
Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time. Now is the time.